Good day, one and all. On behalf of Barrow, I would like to welcome you all for the webinar on oleo-based substitution options. Has detergents industry realized their true potential? My name is Arun and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. For today, we will have our speakers discuss the impact of petrochemical feedstock and carbon footprint on key surfactant, that is linear alkyl sulfonates, also known as LAS. So before we move ahead with the presentation, I would like to mention a few ground rules. First one, please note that all attendees will be placed on mute. Should you have any questions during the course of the presentation, you can use the text box on the right-hand side to type and send in your questions. As the presentation progresses, we will note down any frequently asked questions and post them to the presenters at the end of the session. In case of any connectivity issues, kindly close your window and try to reconnect using the link provided in the email. In case of any further issues, please send an email to Puneet. His email is there in the email that you've received. That's puneet.ramil@barrow-inc.com. So moving on, let me quickly introduce our presenters. We have Dr. Guido Boniolo. Dr. Boniolo spent his professional career in the field of surface and interfacial active agents and specialty chemicals, working first in the European R&D department of the Procter & Gamble company and later in various companies of the Imperial Chemical Industries Group. Since 2002, he is the managing director of WSA Associates, a Brussels-based independent technology development consulting firm, active internationally in the field of effect and specialty chemicals and surface active agents. Dr. Boniolo has produced over 50 publications dealing with the technology, marketing, and innovation processes in the field of specialty chemicals. We also have with us Bhushan Pal, a home care chemicals expert at Barrow. He specializes in providing surfactant-related procurement intelligence to the Fortune 500 companies. He has developed expertise in the areas of laundry detergents, I&IC, and hygiene products. Bhushan has built extensive knowledge and expertise in categories including anionic and non-ionic surfactants for their end-use markets, such as consumer packaged goods and industrial chemicals, among others. In addition, he has authored several white papers, including Impact of Shale Gas on the US LAS Market and a roadmap for an optimal sourcing approach to LATAM sodium sulfate market. So without any further delay, let me pass it on to Dr. Boniolo. So Dr. Boniolo, would you like to take over, please?
Good afternoon, good evening to anybody. These webinars address the evolving scenario of the global detergent market and the opportunities that may emerge in consequence. The last year have seen 4 drivers in action, and these drivers had a different impact in different regions of the world, although all of them played a significant role. And these are changing washing habit, a growing middle class in emerging economies, the penetration of the concept of sustainability intended in a broad sense, and the economics of raw materials. Now, the linear Alkylbenzene Sulfonate that for generations has been the pillar of synthetic detergent is now confronted with both old and newcomers that are finding a more favorable acceptance as a result of the above trends. The webinar will show the evolution that has and is taking place through a logical process that I leave to Bhushan to lead. There are then conclusions on the consequences that might be expected in the coming foreseeable future, with different scenarios depending upon regional circumstances. I leave it to Pushen.
Thank you, Guido, for handing over the presentation to me. Good evening from India to all, and good morning to all of you joining from other parts of the globe. In this webinar, I'm going to highlight the issues being faced by linear alkylbenzene sulfonate and how detergent manufacturers can look at oleo-based molecules as potent substitutes. So how are we going to proceed? The roadmap for this webinar consists of 5 sections. First, I would like to discuss about the importance of detergents in our daily lives and the role that surfactants and LAS play. In the next step, I would be highlighting the issues that are impacting the growth of LAS, and herein would come the role of oleochemicals. The following section will be focusing on a benchmarking exercise between LAS and oleo-based alternatives in terms of performance, applications, cost, and raw materials. Then comes the section where the critical question comes to a procurement manager's mind, that which molecule to adopt in which particular region. And I would try to address that in the section for each of the important detergent consuming regions. Finally, the conclusion where I would like to summarize all the key highlights of the webinar. So it goes without saying that we all understand the importance of detergents in our daily lives. We like to stay clean and fresh, don't we? So how big is the detergents industry in dollars? Let's have a look. A massive $130 billion. Sounds big, right? Yes, of course. And the industry closely follows the global GDP growth rate and would cross the $150 billion mark in the next 5 years. Although being a commodity which is universally known and globally used, detergents exhibit varying and diverse usage patterns across the globe. However, at a broader level, a clear difference in usage trends can be observed between emerging and industrialized economies. Emerging economies are the driving force behind the growth of surfactants at a global level. These regions are recording a constant rise in household disposable income, and this, coupled with the increasing levels of consumer awareness about the quality of life, is fueling the growth of detergents. However, consumers in these regions are very sensitive to cost of living as well, and this leads to the predominant use of economical laundry powders and the practice of hand washing. On the other hand, industrialized economies, being mature markets, have advanced requirements of efficiency along with mildness of products offered with respect to human skin. In these regions, the trend is tilted towards the use of washing machines and advanced liquid and compact formulations. So what are the critical components that constitute the buildup of a detergent? Well, surfactant is the most important component for sure, as it is the surface active agent which reduces the surface tension between the dirt layer and the substrate and helps in cleaning of our clothes. Now that we understand the importance of surfactants, let us look at how surfactants are classified globally. Now, surfactants are classified into 4 major categories: anionics, non-ionics, cationics, and amphoterics. Anionics is the largest class of surfactants globally by demand volume and constitutes nearly half of the global surfactant demand. Non-ionics follow with a global demand share which is close to 40% by volume. So automatically, these two categories comprise close to 90% of the global surfactant universe. LAS, which is linear alkylbenzene sulfonate, falls under the category of anionics and has been the workhorse of the detergents industry for the past several generations. But hey, what makes me say so? LAS has traditionally been referred to as a product with superior detergency properties that, clubbed with general cost effectiveness it offers, has made LAS's position very dominant in the world of detergents. As we can see in the pie chart, LAS constitutes nearly 1/3 of the global surfactants universe on its own with respect to demand in the present day. However, it is important to note that the operating rates have seen a gradual but steady decline, and at present the industry is operating at just above 75%. Now when it comes to the demand for LAS, yes, LAS is expected to grow at a CAGR between 2 to 3% by volume for the next 5 years, and Asia Pacific, as we can see, is the major region in terms of demand as well as supply. Now, this can be attributed to the rising disposable income in the region, coupled with the traditional washing practices tilted in favor of cheap powder detergents. Now, looking at the market of LAS, the question is whether LAS will continue to be the workhorse of the detergents industry in the times to come as well. So, I believe that the answer is no. But why? Because there are several factors LAS has been subject to which have been shaping its growth path in a not so positive direction. So there are two types of factors that I have seen, and they can be classified into primary factors and secondary factors. So let me talk about the primary factors first. Now the first one is the 100% dependence of LAS on petrochemical feedstock. Now LAS is manufactured by the sulfonation of linear alkyl benzene, which is LAB, which is a product entirely dependent on benzene, and finally it all boils down to crude oil. So the benzene market over the past several years has shown tremendous volatility in terms of supply continuity as well as price. So that takes us to the next major factor, which is the price volatility. And these two factors, that is supply continuity and price volatility, are actually interlinked because these are all related to the dependence of LAS on petrochemical feedstocks. So there are various factors. For example, the shale gas boom in the US, which has been prominent since the year 2000s, which has proven to be detrimental to the benzene market dynamics. And also the fact that LAB constitutes only a miserly 6% of the benzene downstream leaves the LAB manufacturers with very little buying power. Therefore, any discontinuity in benzene supply has an amplified effect on LAB and in turn on further downstream products such as LAS. LAS is actually crippled in its flexibility of raw material choice compared to its peers, which are the sulfates, which also fall under the anionics category. Now the sulfates have the option of changing their alcohol sourcing from petroleum-based to oleochemical base. So these are some of the very crucial factors which are impeding the growth of LAS in a direct manner. Now, these are the primary factors, and next I would like to come to the secondary factors, which at present, although do not have a direct impact on the growth path of LAS, but they are important factors for the future as well. So the first one is regulations, and the second one is the consumer voice towards green chemicals. Now again, like the primary factors, the two secondary factors are also somewhat interrelated to each other, in the sense that in industrialized economies like Western Europe and Japan and the US, consumers are very sensitive to the harshness of the chemicals that they use in daily lives, and with regulatory authorities constantly scanning the effect of petrochemical based home and personal care products on the effluent water or on the impact to human skin, the consumers also get to know of the constant pressure that the petrochemical products are facing. So the question is, all these factors have created the need for alternate options that would balance the performance A, cost B, regulatory aspect C, and consumer attitudes D in a suitable manner. So the question is, what are those options? Now, the solution to the question is oleochemicals. Now, what are oleochemicals? Oleochemicals are chemicals that are derived from plant or animal-based sources. Now, important plant-based sources are palm oil and palm kernel oil, whereas one of the important animal sources is tallow or beef tallow. Now, here I would like to mention one thing, that the beef tallow industry got a hit in the year 2000 when the emergence of the mad cow disease in the US happened. So at that time, consumers were not really comfortable using a product which has beef tallow as its source. However, that created further growth path for the plant-based oleochemical molecules like palm oil and palm kernel oil, and since then they have developed tremendously. Now that we know that what are oleochemicals and what are the sources from which they are derived, I would like to take you to what are the different types of oleochemicals which are there in the market, and a simple value chain of that. So as we discussed, we have to start with palm oil and palm kernel oil, which are the basic feedstock. Then we have the two primary building blocks, which are the oleochemical building blocks, which are methyl ester 1 and fatty alcohol 2. Now from methyl ester, we reach the final downstream product, which is methyl ester sulfonate, which is a surfactant and which can be used in home care applications as well as personal care applications. Similarly, from the fatty alcohol route, we can see that there are three products downstream, which are fatty alcohol ethoxylates, FAEs we'll refer to from now on, fatty alcohol sulfates, which are FAS, and fatty alcohol ether sulfates, which is FAES. So these are the products which are based out of plant-based raw materials, and they are used as surfactants. Now that we know the introduction to oleochemicals, it's important to compare the performance of oleochemicals vis-a-vis that of LAS. So I would like to start the comparison of LAS versus its oleochemical peers in terms of performance. Now I have selected 5 parameters to compare the performance of LAS and the oleochemicals. Now the comparison is qualitative in nature, and it gives us an indication on the efficacy of different types of molecules with respect to their properties, such as basic cleaning properties is one section where we talk about parameters like detergency, foaming, and solubility. And we also have some secondary parameters which are not related to cleaning, but they are related to the consumer preferences. So they are skin compatibility and water hardness sensitivity. So the one common thing that I can see on this particular chart is the fact that when it comes to the basic cleaning parameters, LAS still dominates the oleochemical molecules in the present day. And the other part of the story is when it comes to the secondary parameters like skin compatibility and water hardness sensitivity, we see that the oleochemicals dominate in the present situation. So how to create the balance? Well, the fact is compounds like AES and FAE, so these are the compounds which have shown increasing efficacies in some of the properties like detergency and foaming and solubility. However, they are not still matching LAS's level in the present day, but continuous R&D is going on in all the detergent formulating companies as well as at the surfactants level. The aim is to make their performance as comparable to LAS as much as possible. At the same time, use and build on the already strong points that these molecules have in terms of the skin compatibility, that is the mildness factor, and the water hardness sensitivity which is the ease with which these molecules can react in hard water. So this is about the performance comparison. I also thought that it would be important to understand not only the performance but also to have a look at the application range or the application reach of LAS vis-a-vis its oleo peers. Now here the picture is, as you can see, LAS again has reach in all the applications, whereas the trend that we can see that the oleo molecules, they are selectively present in some of the applications. So the applications that I have chosen here are hardcore laundry detergent applications, because that is the major end use of all these different types of surfactants that we are covering. And within laundry we have the powder detergents, the liquids, the hand, and the top load and the front load washing machines. So again we see a similar picture where in the present day LAS is dominating in terms of its reach. However, compounds like fatty alcohol ethoxylates, FAEs, and alcohol ether sulfates, they have proven their efficacy in one or two applications where they have started putting serious competition to linear alkylbenzene sulfonate. And the point that I had mentioned in the previous slide, with continuous R&D year on year, the aim is to further increase or improve this application base and build on the already strong base that these molecules have in some of the applications. Now I would like to dig further deep, and from a procurement manager's point of view, it's very critical to understand the cost benefits offered by the oleochemical molecules that we have been discussing. So naturally, in general, we have a feeling that being green means that the product should be expensive. Now, is it the case with oleochemicals? Well, the answer is no. And the next question is, can we have cost benefits? And here the answer is yes. So how? So let us see how. Now here I would like to show you a comparison between the cost of production of LAS as a base with the four oleochemicals molecules, which are AS, AES, FAE, and MES, and we see the cost savings that the oleochemicals are offering on a per metric ton basis in terms of US dollars. So we see that the range is right from 2% up to 15%. And the most important factor here is, although 2% and 5% may look like single digit figures, but if we do a simple math and convert it to the actual dollar values in terms of metric tons, we'll see that it actually translates to a good, millions of dollars. Now at this juncture, it's also important for me to point out that the comparison that I'm presenting here is based on the assumption that LAS is fully substituted by each of these oleochemical molecules, that is on a one-to-one replacement basis. However, this scenario does not explain if two or more types of products are mixed in a particular formulation, because the cost economics and the savings viewpoint changes in that case. So now at this juncture, I believe that drawing a conclusion will still not be apt without understanding the raw material side of oleochemicals and LAS. Now, what could be the parameters to benchmark? Well, as an analyst, two things that struck my mind without hesitation are A, volume, and B, price. So I'm going to start with the volume side of raw materials for LAS vis-a-vis oleochemicals. Now let's have a look. Now the precursor to LAS is linear alkyl benzene, LAB, and that for the oleochemicals in majority is palm kernel oil. So here we look at the volume aspect and the growth path that these two entities are expected to follow. So the clear thing that we can see here is, one, the first point, that the volume bases are different for LAB and PKO. And there is a significant difference in volume base in the range of 2 million tons between the petrochemical lab and the oleochemical PKO. The other important point is we can see that the capacity utilization for the LAB market resembles that of the LAS market that I had spoken about earlier. On the other hand, the demand CAGR is around 2.5%, whereas if you look at PKO, it's a significant 6.1%. Now why? Because there is rapid palm expansions. This is happening in Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand, which are the major Southeast Asian countries having palm plantations. And that is acting as a driver because Southeast Asia is acting as the global supply hub for the raw materials of these oleochemicals. So the conclusion for this particular slide is that, one, there is a combination of, unutilized capacity for the petrochemical material that clubbed with the low demand CAGR that LAB has, and on the other hand, we have, a higher demand CAGR, which is more than 6% for oleo, and on top of that, the volume base is higher. So this is itself very much explanatory why I believe that the oleochemicals are, much better off when it comes to the supply volumes. Now, next, I would like to talk about the pricing of the oleochemical molecules vis-a-vis the petrochemical molecules. Now here, first we'll start with the immediate precursors, which are LAB for petrochemicals and palm kernel oil, PKO, for oleochemicals. Now this is the price trend, monthly price trend for the past 2 years and the projection for the next year. So the most interesting thing that we can observe here is the fact that when we start at the beginning of the graph, we see that the values, the dollar values, there is a huge difference. There is a significant difference in the range of around 1,200 US dollars per metric ton between petrochemicals and oleochemicals. Now, does this same trend continue as we move along? Let's see. Yes, again we can see that the mid of this year there was a good, 500 US dollars per metric ton difference between the petrochem and the oleochem molecules. Now, how is it going to be when we reach the end of 2015? Again, we see the same trend where there is almost a difference of 800 US dollars per metric ton. Now, this is about the immediate precursors to LAS and oleochemicals. Now, I thought that I would dig further deep and go a level below to look at the raw materials for LAS and PKO. So that's why I thought of including benzene and palm oil in this particular chart. Now, what trend do we see here? again we see that there's a considerable difference in the real number in terms of the price, that is dollars per metric ton. We see that palm oil is about close to 700, whereas benzene is more than double of it. And the same scenario continues in the mid of 2014. And again, the same trend can be expected in the end of 2015 as well. So this takes us to the end of the benchmarking exercise. Now, after taking you through the benchmarking exercise, I feel that you would be interested to know on what volume basis these oleochemical molecules are operating at present and what to expect 5 years from now. So let me start with the scenario of alcohol sulfates and alcohol ether sulfates, which both are part of the anionics category. So alcohol sulfates are currently having a volume base of 400 KT, and let's see how it goes. So here we go, it's moving, and by the end of next 5 years, it's reaching a value of 414 KT at a CAGR of less than 1%. For alcohol ether sulfates, it is from 1.6 million metric tons to a value of 1.9 at a CAGR of between 3 to 4%. For fatty alcohol ethoxylates, it is from 3.6 million metric tons to 4.2 MMT at a CAGR of just above 3%. And last but not the least, MES, which has the smallest volume base at present at close to 350 KT, is expected to move by a staggering 13.3% CAGR to a value of 641 KT at the end of 2019. Now, I would also like to talk about, some of the characteristics that are associated with the markets for each of these molecules. So let me start with AS and AES. Now, as I mentioned, these are part of anionics. That is the same category to which LAS belongs to. Now, AS, like LAS, has been a traditional surfactant which has been in use for several decades. It's predominantly has been used in powder detergent formulations, and over the years it has lost some interest in regions which are switching to liquid detergents and which have opted for milder options. So how have consumers replaced AS with? So actually consumers have replaced AS with AES, and that's why we see that AES has a very impressive CAGR value, considering the fact that it already has an established volume base which is close to more than 1.5 MMT at present. Now, what about FAEs? FAEs are also, very much suitable for liquid detergents, and they are very mild in nature. So they have found wide acceptance in regions such as Western Europe and Japan, and that has really fueled their growth. And when it comes to MES, it is a regional market in the sense that I already talked about Southeast Asia being a supply hub for oleochemicals. Now that is a region where MES has the potential to grow at the CAGR value that we can see. Reason one being that the supply is abundant of the raw materials. The raw material supply is abundant in Southeast Asia. And on the other hand, it goes very well with the fact that the washing practices that is prevalent in Southeast Asia actually matches with the performance and the properties that MES shows. So these are some of the dynamics associated with each of these molecules. Now, once I have shown you the market and the future aspect of each of these molecules, the most crucial question that might come up in the mind of a procurement manager is which product to choose for which region, and will the choice vary by region? So let's have a look. So I would like to start with one of the important detergent consuming regions, which is the US, which represents most of the North American demand for surfactants. So here, what should procurement managers aim for? Should they aim for oleochemicals? Well, I don't think so. Why? Because the US has been subject to the shale gas boom, which has been very much prominent since the year 2000. And what it has done is, on one hand, it has had a negative impact on the market of heavier fractions such as benzene, toluene, and xylene, which has a direct impact on the surfactant, which is LAS. However, on the other hand, it has proven to be very much beneficial for the lighter products, including ethylene and ethylene derivatives. So what does that mean? That essentially translates to the point that ethoxylates, which are prepared from ethylene derivatives such as ethylene oxide and also synthetic alcohols derived out of ethylene, they are in abundance in the present situation. Why? Because there is huge supply of the raw materials, which is essentially ethylene, which starts from ethylene on one hand, and because of the huge availability of ethylene, the pricing is also very comfortable and it's very stable and it is very attractive for ethoxylators to produce alcohol ethoxylates, however not from a natural source but from a synthetic source. But does that mean that there is no penetration of any of the oleochemicals that we discussed? That is also not the case. Oleochemicals can indeed be used depending on the exact requirements of detergent formulators. But one of the compounds which shows good promise in the US is MES. And why do I say so? Because MES goes well with the consumer washing practices in the US, which are low temperature washing and the use of top load washing machines. So that is the reason why I look at MES, having a good potential as compared to some of the other dominant molecules because of the shale gas boom. Now that we looked at the scenario for US, I would like to take you to the scenario for some of the emerging economies, and I would like to talk about BRICS as a region. And so what about BRICS? Now BRICS is a region which has traditionally been favoring its choice towards anionics. Why? Because anionics have been used in powder laundry detergents. One, anionics have the cost effectiveness and the cost economics that the consumers of these regions look out for. So that is why LAS has also been a strong choice for consumers in the BRICS region. But does that mean that there is no scope or no potential for any of the oleochemical molecules to penetrate these markets? No, I don't think so, because I feel that AES, which is a peer to LAS and which has the option to switch to the oleochemical feedstock, is an ideal replacement for LAS in the BRICS region. Why? Because AES can also match the consumer washing habits in the BRICS region. Now what comes next? Next comes fatty alcohol ethoxylates, which are FAEs. And why I say that FAEs are the next choice? Because FAEs are very versatile in the sense that they can be used as a surfactant on its own, or they can also be consumed as intermediates for the production of AES. That's why, in my opinion, AES is the first choice to replace LAS in BRICS, followed by FAE. Now I'll take you to another industrialized region, which includes Western Europe and Japan. Now what about the consumer preference in these regions? Now, as I had mentioned earlier, the consumer preference has been towards liquids, one, and the second thing is consumer preference has been towards milder formulations. Now these, especially the second factor, is also related to the regulatory aspect that is there in these two regions, which are very stringent and which are constantly trying to promote the use of milder and greener products which cause less harm to the environment as well as human skin. So I believe that alcohol ethoxylates, that is fatty alcohol ethoxylates, which are derived out of the oleochemical feedstock, this uh, compound is the ideal replacement choice for LAS because one, it will replace a powder with a liquid, and second, it has proven its efficacy and its performance in liquid formulations, and third, it also caters to the consumer sentiment for milder formulations and which keeps the regulatory bodies happy too. So finally, I would like to look at another emerging economy which is very special to this particular discussion, and that region is Southeast Asia. Why? Because Southeast Asia is the supply hub for oleochemical raw materials, as I have already mentioned. Now here, what is the scenario? Like there is huge reserve of palm oil and palm kernel oil, and it is also very economical to produce methyl ester sulfonate as a product. Why? Because of the huge availability of raw materials and resulting in the cost benefits that the manufacturers get. Also clubbed with the fact that Southeast Asian region offers some cheap labor or labor which is less expensive than some of the industrialized economies. So these factors make it ideal for surfactant manufacturers to go for MES as an option from the supply point of view, and from the demand point of view, MES is very much compatible with the washing practices which are prevalent in the Southeast Asian market, which are hand washing and in small bundles. So finally, let me summarize the key takeaways from this webinar. It's important for procurement managers to realize the changing dynamics of the LAS market, which is going to get further magnified in future, I believe. Only then they would be in a position where they feel the need to realign their portfolio to counter the issue. This webinar has aimed to present a clear and detailed picture of the potential of oleo-based alternatives to LAS, and I believe that in conclusion, my audience has been able to truly realize the mileage offered by oleochemicals in terms of cost economics, sustainability, and supply security. However, one must understand that one size doesn't fit all. So procurement managers must take this opportunity and utilize the presented insights to redesign their regional portfolio management strategy, keeping in mind the varied flavors offered by each region. Thank you so much for your participation. And now I would like Guido to present his concluding remarks on the topic, for which I'm just requesting a minute from our end.
Well, I guess we have some technical issues or line issues with the expert, Dr. Boniello. So I'll just jump into some of the questions that have been raised during the course of the presentation. So I'm just going to take the frequently asked questions. So first one, by how much can one expect the share of LAS within the overall detergents to drop from its current state of 32%. So will the change be drastic? Bhushan, can you take the question?
Yeah, I believe that the change will not be drastic because LAS has been a traditional molecule with a very large volume base. So it would be difficult to replace or change the dynamics of the LAS market overnight. But having said that, I expect that in the next 5 years, the share of LAS may come down by between 1% and 3% of the global surfactants universe. So that essentially translates to a figure of say 29% or 30% of the overall market. However, if we see that even 2% or 3% in a large volume base is significant.
All right, thanks, Bhushan. So next question. So in spite of the declining trend for LAS, if I, as a procurement manager, want to know what is still driving LAS at a CAGR of 2.5%, what would be the answer? So, Bhushan, can you give your opinion on that, please?
Yes, sure. For this particular question, I believe that it's a combination of Asia as a region and laundry detergents as an application, which is going to be the major driving force for the 2.5% that you are referring to, and that would continue to be the driving force for the next few years.
All right, thank you. Next one, so is there any time frame for me to realize the true cost economics offered by oleochemicals? So,
Hello?
yeah, so Dr. Boniolo, so the question is there any time frame for me to realize the true cost economics offered by oleochemicals?
Well, the question is really how long is a piece of string? It can be different depending from essentially regional circumstances and the attitude of the players. It can be as short as, I would say, a year, even less than a year in certain cases, if the decisions are made swiftly and promptly, or up to a maximum of 2 years from the moment a decision to switch to oleochemicals versus petrochemical is being made. It can be variable, but that is a realistic time scale. Now, if people decide to stay on LAS, of course, well, then the time frame will be different.
Right. So I'm going to go into the next question. So which molecule among the oleochemicals shows the maximum promise according to you? So doctor, would you like to take the question, please?
I think it has been covered already to a good extent. I personally believe that in overall the alcohol ethoxylates are going to be favorite. both as own surfactant, as individual surfactant, as co-surfactants, and as intermediate for the ether sulfate. I think that in certain parts of the world, like Latin America, because of combination of circumstances, LAS will continue to be a key player. And as it was mentioned, in Southeast Asia, China, presumably India, the methyl ester sulfonate stand a very good chance and a very good opportunity. Both because of the economics and because of the washing habits and the performance they can offer.
All right, so thanks so much for that. I guess that was the last question for the session. So, Dr. Boniolo, any final words or conclusion from your side?
No, what I just wanted to say is that although LAS is losing ground as the key surfactant in household detergent and in industrial applications, this process of substitution will be an evolution rather than a revolution. So what we should expect in the coming year will be a progressive erosion of the position that LAS hold, but the volume produced and consumed will be considerable. That will be the result of a balance between a loss of market and market share in favor of oleochemicals on one side, but on one side on some marginal gains that will come when the LAS will replace soap in the washing habit of several emerging economies. The net result will be a decrease in market share for LAS, but that will help holding an important position for LAS also for the few years to come.
Right. Thanks so much, Dr. Boniolo. I think that was a wonderful conclusion for this session, and thanks to Pushan as well for his insights. So that wraps up today's webinar. In case of any further questions on this topic, you can always drop in an email to us, and we'll be happy to respond to your email and work with you on that. So saying that, thank you everyone for your participation in today's webinar, and you have a nice rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.